First Contact Misconceptions. The Galactic Federation's Grand Assembly Hall fell silent as Ambassador Elena Chen stepped onto the speaker's platform. 300 different species, represented by their most distinguished diplomats, stared at her with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and barely concealed hostility. The massive crystalline dome above reflected the light of 3 suns, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled aliens' varied forms. Distinguished members of the Federation. Elena began, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. I stand before you not as a monster, but as a representative of a species you've misunderstood. She could see the Vaxteri delegation's tentacles writhing in agitation, their color shifting to a deep purple of distress. High Counselor Zixtal, an imposing figure with iridescent scales and multiple eye stalks, rose from his position at the head of the assembly. Misunderstood. His voice boomed through the translation field. Your species evolved on a world we would classify as Category 5 Deathworld. You survive radiation levels that would kill most sentient beings. Your endurance capabilities border on the impossible. How can we trust a species that thrives in conditions that would annihilate most life forms? Elena smiled, though she knew some species would interpret the showing of teeth as aggression. That's precisely why I'm here today. Our adaptability isn't a weapon. It's a gift born from necessity. She activated the holographic display, showing Earth in all its varied glory. Our world shaped us, yes. We evolved to handle extreme temperature variations, to recover from injuries that would be fatal to many species, to process a variety of foods that might be toxic to others. But these adaptations didn't make us conquerors, they made us survivors. The assembly stirred as images of human history flowed across the display, not of wars or conquests, but of human accomplishments. The first steps on the moon, the Mars colonies, the deep-sea exploration vessels, the Antarctic research stations. We don't just survive in harsh conditions, Elena continued. We learn from them. Every challenge we've faced has taught us something new about ourselves and the universe we share. Yes, we can endure what many species cannot, but that ability has given us a unique perspective on life itself. A Meridian representative, their crystalline form glittering with skepticism, interrupted. But your military capabilities are defensive. Elena cut in firmly. Yes, we're strong. Yes, we can fight. But look at our history of first contact with other species. In every instance, we've sought peaceful dialogue first. Our strength isn't a threat. It's a promise of protection for those who would stand with us as allies. The hologram shifted to show human medical personnel treating alien species in various crisis zones, human engineers working alongside alien teams to terraform hostile planets, human scientists collaborating with extraterrestrial colleagues to solve complex problems. We've survived because we learned to adapt, to endure, to overcome. But more importantly, we've survived because we learned to work together. First among ourselves, and now, we hope, with you. The assembly hall erupted in murmurs as Elena's words sank in. High Counselor Zixtal's eye stalks swayed thoughtfully. You speak of cooperation, Ambassador Chen, but how can species so different from yours ever truly trust beings who could survive our deaths? Elena's expression softened. Because that's exactly why you should trust us. We know what it means to be vulnerable. Our strength wasn't given to us. We earned it through millions of years of facing challenges that nearly destroyed us. We understand the precious nature of life precisely because we've had to fight so hard to preserve it. She gestured to the gathered assembly. Look around this room. Every species here evolved to survive their own challenges. We're different, yes, but that diversity is what makes life remarkable. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. We want to help protect it. The Vaxteri delegation's tentacles had slowly shifted to a more neutral blue. One of their speakers rose. You claim to be protectors, yet your very existence terrifies many of us. How do you propose to bridge this gap? By showing you who we really are, Elena replied. I propose opening Earth to Federation observation teams. Let us show you our schools, our hospitals, our art galleries. Let us demonstrate that the same strength that lets us survive on Deathworlds also drives us to create beauty, to heal the sick, to explore the unknown not for conquest, but for knowledge. The assembly buzzed with renewed discussion. High Counselor Zixtal raised all four of his arms for silence. An interesting proposal, Ambassador. But surely you understand our need for assurances. Elena nodded, which is why I'm also here to formally invite the Federation to establish a permanent monitoring station on Earth. Complete transparency. Let us prove through actions, not just words, that humanity's greatest strength isn't our physical capabilities, but our desire to use those capabilities for the benefit of all. The assembly hall erupted in a cacophony of voices, clicks, and telepathic pulses. Some delegates appeared outraged, others intrigued, but all were engaged. Elena stood calmly at the podium, knowing that this was just the beginning. Humanity's journey to prove itself worthy of trust would be long and challenging, but if there was one thing humans knew how to do, it was endure. High Counselor Zixtal's voice cut through the chaos. Ambassador Chen, your proposal is unprecedented. The Assembly will need time to deliberate. Of course, High Counselor. Time is something we humans have learned to use wisely. Elena's gaze swept across the Assembly one final time. We'll wait for your decision, however long it takes. After all, patience is another survival trait we've mastered. As she stepped down from the platform, Elena could feel the shift in the room's energy. Fear still lingered, but it was now mixed with something else, curiosity, and perhaps, just perhaps, the first seeds of understanding. The trial of endurance. 3 months after Ambassador Chen's proposal, humanity faced its greatest diplomatic challenge. The Federation had designed a series of trials, not just for Elena, but for a carefully selected team of human representatives. They called it the Concordance Trials, but Elena knew what it really was, a test to see if humans could control their legendary capabilities. The chosen location was Station Nexus 7, a massive space station orbiting a neutron star. Elena stood with her team in the preparation chamber. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a xenobiologist, Captain James Wong, a veteran of the Mars Wars, and Dr. Konstantin Petrov, an environmental adaptation specialist. Through the reinforced viewing windows, they could see the assembled Federation observers, their various forms illuminated by the harsh light of monitoring equipment. "They're expecting us to fail," Sarah murmured, adjusting her environmental suit. "The parameters they've set, they're designed to push us to our limits." Elena nodded. "That's exactly the point. They want to see what happens when we're pushed too far. Will we break? Will we lash out? Or will we prove we're more than just survivors of a death world?" The first trial began without warning. The chamber's environment shifted dramatically, creating conditions that would be lethal to most Federation species. Extreme heat, then crushing cold, followed by radiation levels that would sterilize conventional life forms. The human team remained steady, their specialized suits and natural resilience allowing them to endure. But physical challenges were just the beginning. The Federation observers introduced complex problem-solving scenarios under extreme stress. They had to negotiate peace treaties while experiencing gravity fluctuations that would scramble most beings' cognitive functions. They needed to perform delicate medical procedures wearing suits that limited their legendary endurance and strength. "They're not just testing our survival capabilities," Konstantin observed during a brief respite. "They're testing our restraint, our ability to work within limitations." James smiled grimly. "Showing them we can punch through walls wouldn't help our case. We need to prove we can choose not to." The trials continued for days. The team faced simulated diplomatic crises, environmental disasters, and first contact scenarios. Each challenge was designed to test not just their physical capabilities, but their judgment, empathy, and self-control. On the 7th day, they faced the final trial. The chamber was flooded with a neural dampening field that would incapacitate most species. Through the haze of disorientation, They discovered they had to rescue a group of alien civilians from a failing habitat module without using their full strength, which would destroy the delicate structure. "This is impossible," Sarah gasped, fighting the effects of the field. "We can't save them without using our full capabilities. But if we do—" Elena's vision swam, but her mind remained clear. "We can. We just need to think differently. Humans didn't just evolve to be strong. We evolved to be smart." Working together, they devised a solution. Instead of brute force, they used their understanding of physics and engineering to stabilize the habitat. Rather than rely on their superior endurance, they created a series of small, controlled movements that gradually guided the civilians to safety. It took hours longer than a direct approach would have, but they completed the rescue without a single display of their full physical capabilities. When the trial ended, the Federation observers were silent. High Counselor Zixtal entered the chamber personally, a breach of normal protocol that showed just how significant this moment was. "Impressive," he said. Eye stalks swaying in what Elena had learned was a gesture of deep thought. "But not for the reasons we expected. We designed these trials to test your limits, to see if beings from a death world could control their natural advantages. Instead, you showed us something far more valuable." Elena stepped forward, still wearing her trial suit. "And what's that, High Counselor?" "That your true strength isn't your physical capabilities at all. It's your ability to adapt, to find solutions that don't rely on brute force. You didn't just pass our trials, you transformed them." The other observers entered the chamber, their various forms creating a living tapestry of alien life. The Vaxteri representative, whose tentacles now glowed with a warm golden light, spoke next. "We feared you because you could survive what would kill us. But we failed to understand that survival wasn't your goal. Cooperation was. You didn't just endure our trials. You found ways to succeed while protecting others, even at cost to yourselves." Elena looked at her team, seeing the exhaustion and pride in their faces. "That's what we've been trying to tell you. Humans didn't become strong just to dominate. We became strong so we could help others become strong too." High Counselor Zixtal made a gesture that caused the chamber systems to power down. "The Concordance trials are concluded. Ambassador Chen, your species has not just earned our trust. You've earned our admiration. The Federation Assembly will convene tomorrow to formally begin integration proceedings for humanity." As the observers filed out, Sarah turned to Elena. "Do you think they finally understand?" Elena watched the retreating forms of their alien observers, noting how their body language had changed from fear to something approaching respect. "They're beginning to. And that's all we needed, a beginning." The team gathered their equipment, ready to face whatever challenges tomorrow would bring. They had proved that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to survive on death worlds. It was their ability to help others thrive in them. Battlefield of Evolution. The emergency alert shattered the celebratory atmosphere of humanity's formal Federation induction ceremony. Warning signals pulsed through Station Nexus 7's neural networks, causing the assembled alien diplomats to recoil in collective shock. High Counselor Zixtal's eye stalks rigid with alarm as the tactical display materialized in the center of the Grand Chamber. Swarm vessels detected. The automated system announced. Classification: unknown. Behavior pattern: hostile. Threat level: Omega. Elena Chen watched as the holographic display showed hundreds of crystalline ships emerging from what appeared to be artificial wormholes. They moved with an unsettling geometric precision, their formation resembling a massive lattice structure. "The Geometric Collective," whispered a Meridian representative, their crystalline form dimming with fear. "We thought they were just a legend." Captain Wong stepped forward, his military training taking over. "What are we dealing with?" High Counselor Zixtal's scales had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality. They are an ancient species that chose to merge their consciousness with crystalline computational matrices. They view organic life as an inefficiency to be corrected, by force if necessary. The station shuddered as the first wave of attacks hit the outer defensive shields. The collected ships moved in perfect synchronization, each blast precisely calculated to stress specific points in the station's defenses. They're not just attacking randomly, Elena realized. They're solving us like a mathematical equation. Dr. Martinez was already analyzing the sensor data on her portable terminal. Their attacks are following a clear algorithmic pattern. They're treating our defenses like a complex problem to be optimized. Then let's give them a problem they can't solve, Captain Wong suggested. Something inherently chaotic, something human. The Federation's military commanders, initially hesitant to work with the newly inducted humans, found themselves without choice as the collective's attack intensified. Within hours, the station's command center had become an unprecedented collaboration of species. Elena watched as Captain Wong worked with Vaxteri tactical experts, their tentacles now glowing with intense concentration as they integrated human battle strategies with their own ancient combat wisdom. Dr. Martinez collaborated with Meridian scientists, combining human intuition with their crystalline computing capabilities to predict the collective's attack patterns. The collective operates on pure logic, Dr. Petrov observed, studying the enemy's movement patterns. They expect their opponents to make optimal decisions. But humans, we specialize in being unpredictable. Elena finished. Our greatest strength isn't our physical capabilities. It's our ability to defy logical expectations. The combined fleet launched its counterattack. Instead of the mathematically perfect formations the collective expected, they faced squadrons flying in seemingly chaotic patterns inspired by Earth's weather systems. When the collective adapted to this, the tactics shifted again, this time mimicking the seemingly random but deeply patterned behavior of human crowd movements. The collective's perfect crystalline formations began to show signs of stress. Their algorithms couldn't predict the human-inspired strategies, and their attempts to compensate created vulnerabilities in their previously impenetrable defense grid. They're trying to find the pattern, Sarah Martinez explained, watching the tactical display. But we're not giving them one to find. We're using patterns that look random but aren't, just like evolution itself. The battle raged for hours. The Federation fleet, guided by human tactical insights, pressed their advantage. Ships moved in formations inspired by everything from murmurations of starlings to the chaotic flow of river rapids. Each time the collective developed a counter-strategy, the human advisors would suggest a new, seemingly illogical approach that nonetheless proved devastatingly effective. Finally, the collective's perfect formation shattered. Their remaining ships retreated through their artificial wormholes, leaving behind a battlefield scattered with crystalline debris. In the aftermath, as damage control teams worked to stabilize the station, High Counselor Zixtal approached the human team. "We owe you more than gratitude," he said, his scales now shimmering with what Elena recognized as profound respect. "You've shown us something we never understood before." "What's that?" Elena asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "That chaos isn't always a weakness. That unpredictability, properly applied, can be stronger than perfect logic. That sometimes the best solution isn't the most efficient one. It's the one no one expects." The Vaxteri tactical officer, their tentacles now pulsing with a deep blue of contemplation, added, "We feared your species because you evolved on a death world. We never considered that this same evolution gave you something far more valuable than mere survival capabilities." Elena nodded. The ability to adapt, to think creatively, to find solutions that don't follow logical patterns. These aren't bugs in our evolutionary code. They're features. Humanity didn't just evolve to survive harsh conditions. We evolved to thrive in uncertainty. As the station's repair crews worked, human and alien alike, Elena could see the change in how the Federation species now regarded her people. The fear was gone, replaced by something new: understanding. They had faced an enemy that represented perfect order and won through embracing chaos, not as a destructive force, but as a creative one. Perhaps, High Counselor Zixtal mused, watching the collaborative repair efforts, This is why your species survived your death world. Not because you were stronger or more resilient, but because you learned to turn unpredictability into an advantage. And now you've taught us to do the same. The stars beyond the station's viewports seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the birth of something new. A partnership forged in battle, but promising much more in peace. Humanity had proved itself not just as warriors, but as teachers, showing the galaxy that sometimes the best way to face the perfect order of death was with the beautiful chaos of life. The shadow of understanding. In the weeks following the Geometric Collective's retreat, Station Nexus 7 became a hub of unprecedented cultural exchange. The station's massive biodome, originally designed to accommodate different atmospheric requirements, now hosted representatives from across the Federation studying humanity with new eyes. Alina Chen found herself in the center of it all, not as a diplomat defending humanity's right to exist in the galactic community, but as a teacher helping others understand what it truly meant to be human. Today, she stood before a mixed group of Federation scientists and cultural observers, watching their reactions as they studied the holographic display of Earth's evolutionary history. Your planet, a Meridian researcher noted, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of fascination. It wasn't just harsh, it was constantly changing. Exactly, Alina confirmed. Earth wasn't just a death world because of its conditions. It was a death world because those conditions never stayed the same. Ice ages followed tropical periods. Continents shifted. Atmospheres transformed. We didn't just evolve to survive harsh conditions. We evolved to survive change itself. Dr. Martinez had joined the session, adding her xenobiological expertise. What we're finding is that most Federation species evolved in relatively stable environments. Their adaptations were specific responses to specific challenges. But humans, we had to become adaptable to everything, Alina finished, because we never knew what the next challenge would be. The Vaxteri cultural attache, whose tentacles now displayed patterns indicating deep thought rather than their former fear, raised an appendage. This explains much about your art, your music, your literature. They all speak of change, of transformation. Even your entertainment focuses on exploring the unknown. High Counselor Zixtal, who had taken a personal interest in these sessions, moved forward. His scales now shifted colors in a way that suggested curiosity rather than alarm. But surely this constant adaptation came at a cost. The energy required, the resources needed. Dr. Petrov, who had been quietly analyzing data in the corner, looked up from his terminal. That's the beautiful irony of it all. The cost of our adaptability became its own reward. We learned to derive pleasure from solving problems, from facing challenges. What other species might see as stress, we often experience as excitement. The assembled aliens murmured among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of contemplation. Alina could see them struggling with this concept, trying to reconcile their former fear of humanity's capabilities with this new understanding. Consider how we responded to the collective's attack, Alina continued. Where they saw perfect order, we saw patterns to be disrupted. Where they calculated optimal solutions, we improvised. Our chaos wasn't random. It was the product of millions of years of evolution, teaching us that the perfect solution isn't always the best one. A young Meridian scientist, their crystal structures still showing signs of recent growth, posed a question that sent ripples through the assembly. Does this mean that all Deathworld species would develop similar traits? No, Dr. Martinez answered, pulling up comparative evolutionary data. That's what makes humanity unique. Other Deathworld species we've studied typically evolved extreme specializations, perfect adaptations to their specific challenges. But humans, we evolved to be generalists. We traded perfection for flexibility. The holographic display shifted to show human achievements throughout history. The first sea voyages, the Wright brothers' flight, the moon landing, the Mars colonies. Each image showed humans venturing into environments they weren't specifically evolved to survive in, yet finding ways to thrive. Your species, High Counselor Zixtal observed, doesn't wait for evolution to catch up with your ambitions. You create your own adaptations through technology, through innovation, through sheer determination. Elena nodded. But more importantly, we share those adaptations. We don't just solve problems for ourselves, we solve them for others. That's why we're here, why we saw out the stars. Not to conquer, but to connect. The session continued late into the station's artificial night cycle, with Federation members asking increasingly sophisticated questions about human psychology, sociology, and evolutionary history. But it was a quiet observation from a Vaxteri elder that captured the essence of humanity's new relationship with the Federation. "We feared you because we thought you were Deathworld monsters," the elder said, their tentacles glowing with wisdom's amber light. "Now we understand that you are Deathworld teachers. You don't just survive the impossible, you show others how to survive it too." As the session concluded, Elena found herself standing with High Counselor Zixtal near the biodome's observation window. The neutron star's harsh light created dancing shadows across the station's interior. "You know," Zixtal mused, "when we first discovered your species, we thought we needed to protect the galaxy from you. Now I wonder if perhaps you were meant to protect the galaxy for us." Elena watched the play of light and shadow, remembering all the challenges humanity had faced and overcome. "Protection isn't about being the strongest or the most resilient," she said. "It's about helping others find their own strength, their own resilience. That's what humanity learned from our death world, not just how to survive, but how to help others thrive." The station's lights dimmed for the night cycle, but throughout its corridors, discussions continued. Ideas flowed, and understanding grew. Humanity's legacy as a Deathworld species was being rewritten, not erased, but transformed into something that offered hope rather than fear. In the shadow of that understanding, a new kind of galactic civilization was beginning to emerge. Warriors of Light. 5 years after the Geometric Collective's attack, Station Nexus 7 had transformed. Once a simple diplomatic outpost, it had become the galaxy's premier center for cross-species innovation and adaptation studies. The station's crystalline dome now housed the Adaptive Sciences Academy, where beings from across the Federation came to learn what humanity called the art of the impossible. Elena Chen stood in the Academy's main observation deck, watching students of various species tackle environmental challenges in the simulation chambers below. A young Vaxteri was learning to operate in high-gravity conditions using techniques developed by human deep-sea researchers. Nearby, a Meridian crystalline being practiced flexibility protocols inspired by human yoga, their typically rigid form flowing with unexpected grace. "Remarkable," High Counselor Zixtal said, joining her at the window. His scales now regularly displayed the deep blues and greens of contentment, rather than the worried grays of their first meetings. 5 years ago, many of these adaptations would have been considered impossible for these species. "The impossible is just the improbable waiting to be understood," Elena replied, quoting Dr. Martinez's now famous opening lecture at the Academy. "We're not teaching them to be human. We're teaching them to find their own ways to adapt." The station shuddered slightly as a new section unfolded from its structure. The latest expansion to accommodate the growing number of species seeking to study what had become known as human adaptation theory. But the real revolution wasn't in the physical changes to the station. It was in the fundamental shift in how the Federation viewed challenge and change. Captain Wong, now the Academy's chief tactical instructor, approached with a group of mixed-species military officers. "We just completed the first joint exercise between the Vaxteri Defense Fleet and the Meridian Space Guard," he reported. "They're developing hybrid tactics that neither species would have conceived of independently. And more importantly," added Dr. Petrov, who had emerged from his research lab, "they're doing it without trying to become something they're not. The Vaxteri aren't attempting to mimic human strength, nor are the Meridians copying our neural patterns. They're finding their own paths to adaptability." Elena nodded, remembering the long journey from those first fearful diplomatic meetings to this moment. That was always the goal. not to make the galaxy more human, but to help every species discover their own potential for growth and change. The observation deck's displays showed various scenes from across Federation space. A Meridian colony successfully establishing itself on a volcanic world using principles learned from human geological studies. Vaxteri engineers developing new forms of space travel inspired by human theoretical physics. Even the traditionally isolated Xenon Collective had begun sending representatives to learn about adaptive problem-solving. We've received another communication from the Geometric Collective. High Counselor Zixtal mentioned, his tone carefully neutral. They've requested to send observers to the Academy. Elena raised an eyebrow. The same collective that tried to optimize organic life out of existence. The very same. It seems their encounter with human unpredictability forced them to reconsider some of their fundamental assumptions about efficiency and adaptation. They're particularly interested in studying how chaos and order can coexist productively. Life finds a way. Elena mused, even for crystalline artificial intelligences. The station's central chamber had been converted into what humans would recognize as a park, a place where different species could interact in a natural setting. Elena watched as a group of younger aliens played an adapted version of human sports, their different physiologies requiring them to constantly innovate new ways to participate. You know what the most surprising outcome of all this has been? Dr. Martinez asked, joining them after finishing her xenobiology lecture. It's not just that other species are learning to adapt, it's that we're learning from them too. The Meridian's crystalline computing principles have revolutionized our neural interface technology. The Vaxteri's color-based emotional communication has opened new frontiers in human psychology. That's because we never stopped being Deathworld survivors, Elena replied. We're still adapting, still learning, still growing. We've just gotten better at bringing others along on the journey. High Counselor Zixtal's scales shifted to a new color, one Elena had never seen before. We've created a new term in the Federation's central database, he announced. The definition of human has been updated. It no longer reads Deathworld species or potential threat. Now it reads teachers of adaptation, guardians of growth, warriors of light. Elena felt a warmth in her chest at these words. Warriors of light, she repeated. I like that. It captures the duality of our nature, the strength to fight when necessary, but always in service of illumination and understanding. As the artificial day cycle began to dim, the station's lights created a gentle aurora effect throughout the chambers. Another adaptation, this one designed to help various species transition between their different natural rhythms. Elena watched the colors play across the faces of humans and aliens alike, all of them now part of something greater than their individual species. We came from a world that tried to kill us, she said softly, and learned not just to survive, but to thrive. Now we're teaching the galaxy that same lesson, not through force or fear, but through understanding and innovation. Every species has the potential to transcend their limitations, to become more than their evolution intended. We're just helping them discover that truth for themselves. The station continued its eternal orbit around the neutron star, its halls filled with the sounds of dozens of species learning, growing, and adapting together. Humanity had indeed proven to be the deadliest species in the universe, not through violence or conquest, but through their ability to kill the concept of impossibility itself, one adaptation at a time. In the great darkness of space, Station Nexus 7 shone like a beacon, its light carrying a message to all who would see it. In a universe full of deathworlds, life finds a way to flourish. And sometimes, the greatest strength isn't in surviving the darkness, but in teaching others how to light their own way through it.